Hey guys, I'm really excited to share this episode with you. Dr. Steve Hruby, it's Hruby. We just had an incredible conversation. It's very deep, very meaningful, very profound for me, and I hope you find it to be for you as well. The things that he shares are life transforming, and he does incredible work. If you look in the show notes, there's ways to reach him and connect with him and learn more and utilize him as a chiropractor, which, if you're in search for one, I highly recommend it. Enjoy. All right. And welcome everyone to today's episode featuring Steve Hruby. Dr. Steve, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's wonderful to be here.
So I'd like to dive right in, starting with your life story, where and how you were born, your early family, and then your younger years that led you up to the point in life where you're at right now, doing what you're doing.
Okay. So I'm a Arizona native. I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona. My parents, both PhDs. My father was a professor at the University of Arizona in chemistry. So it will tie in later because I just have a strong scientific background growing up I'm very blessed, amazing parents. Um, really blessed life, blessed childhood. Grew up in Tucson. Tucson's a really cool town. Just had a good upbringing, played sports, had good friends throughout my life. I was a daredevil child, kind of an adrenaline junkie when I was young. Um, we did a lot of, there was a time I was doing a lot of BMX biking. When I say I was doing BMX biking, I always joke that I wasn't good at it. I was good at falling. Back in the 80s, we built ramps in people's backyards and just did a lot of like wild daredevil stuff. Um, that kind of led me to my career. I stayed in Tucson through college, so I went to the University of Arizona. In my early 20s, woke up one day and I couldn't stand up straight. Um, was having just extreme like low back pain and muscle spasms. That within a week led me to a friend of mine bringing me to a chiropractor. Never been to a chiropractor. Nobody in my family went to a chiropractor. Uh, I was probably as skeptical as you could be going in there. But I was in pain and willing to try whatever at that point. Um, the doctor who worked with me, Dr. Fred, helped me tremendously. I mean, within a week, my back was feeling better. We had done X-rays. It turned out I had a broken back, not from anything that had happened recently, but when I was young, probably doing my BMX biking, had probably one of many thousands of bad falls. Actually, broke my back. Um, and that's why in my early 20s I was experiencing back problems that, quite frankly, a lot of people in this world have, but don't have till much later in life. Um, and I'd already graduated college, and chiropractic just like grabbed my attention. It helped me so much. Um, Ended up going to chiropractic school because I just got inspired. Like, this is what I want to do with my life. It helped me so much. Interesting enough, it helped me, and what really turned the light bulb on me for me with chiropractic was I remember when the doctor was assessing me, he said to me, he'd gone through my history and he's like, listen, these allergies you have, I have a feeling this is going to help you. And I remember just hearing him say that. I'm like, this guy, like, I don't know what he's talking about. Um, but about a month into my treatment, my back was, like I said, got better pretty quick. I was out golfing with some buddies and I saw my one buddy suffering with allergies. And I realized, because I was just like kind of that snotty-nosed kid, I always had like these low grade and a lot of times high grade allergies going on. And my allergies cleared up about 95% from
Wow.
being
And
adjusted. Yeah,
just from being adjusted.
just from being adjusted. And
That's
we can
incredible.
get back to that later and I'll explain why that happened. It's not going to happen for everybody, by the way, if you have allergies. Um, but that was a light bulb moment. It really inspired me. went to California for chiropractic school, moved back to Arizona, to Scottsdale, where I live now, when I graduated in 2000. So now I've been a 25-year practicing chiropractor. I'm licensed in physiotherapy, which is a PT degree. Um, and I have an extreme, got about 15 years ago, got really interested in longevity for myself.
Mm.
And since then, I'm just really passionate about longevity and the health and wellness and lifestyle choices around longevity. So a lot of what I do is around that now. Um, and I'm a father, 11 years happily married. I got two amazing teenage kids. A girl is 17, my son's 15. So life is busy, life is fun. I'm very blessed. I'm very passionate about what I do, which is help people. I just love people, and I'm very blessed because, I mean, my biggest joy in life is like working with others and helping other people. Maybe not my biggest joy in life, but it's one of my huge joys in life. And that's what I'm passionate about, and that's like really what drives me um, every day.
I love that. Just a little background for the listeners. I met Dr. Steve last weekend on a men's hike. We'd gone up to Camp Verde and went into Bullpen area and just kind of had a really incredible day talking to each other and connecting and making new friendships. And I was really grateful to have met you. We talked for quite a while we were walking. I realized how long we were talking when the next day I brought the family up with the grandbabies and we walked the same distance and it took forever. And it just seemed to fly by while we were talking. And I remember we were talking about some of these things and we were talking about Dr. John Sarno at one point, the pain specialist in New York. He's since passed away, but for 49 years, he helped people through pain and did an incredible job. And his whole teaching that he put his patients through were weekly classes and seminars and recordings. And he taught that we are the energy that animates the body, the physical. And sometimes the energy will get clogged up or blocked within the chakra centers or different spots throughout the body, which is simply an indicator that there's some inner work to be done, some healing within. Um, can you tell us more about that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's a really powerful thing to start understanding about ourselves with our body. Um, just trying to think like what's the best place to start. So I'd start with this. Like I mean, we're energetic creatures, right? And um, your body is and your nervous system is how you, well, let's take it from this angle, is how you process stress. Okay, so we all live in three dimensions of stress in this physical form that we're here and now. There's physical stress, right? So physical stress can be a trauma like a car accident, falling off a ladder. We tend to think of stress as bad. Stress is not bad. There are bad stresses, but there are also good stresses for your body. And everything fun and wonderful that happens in your life, you have to experience through this body, and it's going to put stress on your body, right? So, exercise is stress, right? You do exercise properly in the physical form, it's good for you. You do it improperly, you're going to hurt or injure yourself with that type of stress. Sitting in a chair 8 hours a day is a physical stress. So doing nothing is a physical stress actually on your body.
Yeah.
There are biochemical stresses that we all experience. We live in a very toxic world, so we get exposed to tons of toxicities that our ancestors never did. I mean, and I'm talking about our ancestors just 50 years ago and 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. But all the the hormonal changes, there's millions of chemical reactions happening in your body every day you have to process. And then there's what I call the fun stresses, psychological, emotional stresses, work, relationships, finances, um, even your spirituality. And again, this is all good and bad. These are things. This is the dimension that we live in this world. Here's the interesting thing about stress and what's important, and it ties into what you're saying with Dr. Sarnos, is to process stress, it all turns physical. meaning that all of that stress we have to process through our body, whether it's physical, biochemical, emotional. So very commonly, let's just say somebody has low back pain. They're almost always looking for, here's a physical pain I have. What's the physical reason? And certainly there can be physical reasons. Like in my case, I broke my back when I was young. That's a physical reason why I was having low back pain. But what the science is very clear about is to process stress, that biochemical stress and emotional stress is all going to turn physical in your body as well. And largely, what the science is pretty clear on is we're mostly experiencing emotional stress. Um, and what I would say that you see a lot with emotional stress too is people often don't heal. They hold on to their emotional stress. They may repress their emotional stress. They may just not be dealing with their emotional stress. They may be doing all those things and still overloaded with it. And it's going to show up in your body. And so for me, for example, chiropractor, people may show up and they're expressing pain. I help their body process that stress physically through adjustments, clearing up channels in their nervous system. But on the emotional level, okay, if there's, or this just thinking about on the biochemical, if they have a toxicity in their home and I'm helping them and they go back home, is that toxicity still there? Is it still then going to have to it's going to still re-manifest itself in the body? And that happens on the emotional level for people all the time too. So a lot of what's important to understand is, your body can process these stresses, but often we're not getting to the root of what's actually leading to those problems in people.
So
What's
then therefore the
blocking those channels.
pain will
Yeah.
always come back.
Yes. Yeah.
So getting to the root or the source of the actual issue that's manifesting physically for them, how do you go about doing that?
Um, so as a chiropractor, I'd say in large part, w- I am really a doctor of the nervous system. With my chiropractic and PT background, we're looking at the biomechanical. There's other things going on. So we have a test here called a surface electromyogram. It directly measures the nerve roots. So it's measuring that signal coming from the brain down the spinal cord out the specific nerves. This is where the brain and the body are communicating. We want to optimize that so your body can process stress to its optimal ability. So we have a way to measure that. These built up stresses over the years will show up in the scans where there's blockages and where they're not seeing that. We also do X-ray so I can structurally see what's going on as well.
Mhm.
I do a long intake. So when a patient comes to visit me, they're usually there for an hour the first day, and we're going over those three dimensions: the physical, the biochemical, the emotional. So I'm assessing kind of A, how optimized is their body to adapt to stress? And then B, let's also look at the stresses coming in. Those are the two factors we're looking at. As long as you're in this range where you have stress going on and you can adapt to stress, you're fine, you're healthy. All right. But you could be the healthiest guy on the planet. You fall a two-story building, hit the ground. Right here, there's too much stress for your body to adapt to. You become sick, symptomatic, or hurt. Okay. When this system gets overloaded for times, and life's just going to do that to every one of us in small and some people big ways, this is getting driven down. So as this gets driven down, now all of a sudden stresses that were fine and healthy for you could be exercise. Now it's hurting you, it's injuring you.
That makes a lot of sense. You really take a holistic approach then, like the mind, body, soul, and the treatment plan afterwards, I guess, is sort of individualized and personalized to each
Yeah.
patient.
Yeah. I always say the philosophy is health comes from the inside out. That tends to be like kind of the Eastern philosophy. Pretty much most health philosophies, other than Western health philosophy, tends to be health from the inside out. Meaning you're innately designed to be healthy. We just want to remove interferences to your body's ability to become healthy. Where Western medicine often, not always, but it's like health from the outside in. Here's a pill, potion, lotion. Let's give you the surgery. Um, I'm not against that. There's definitely a time and place for that, right? But we come from much more that approach of like, hey, what do we do so we can optimize your body to do what's designed to do to the best of its ability?
That's incredible. I love that approach. Um, Can you uh, speak to the idea of leaning into what is good for us and backing off from what's actually bad for us, and maybe making a general list for the human body, doing things that are good for it as opposed to what are bad for it? Like what's
Yeah,
important?
yeah. Um, yeah, one of the things, so I think as I mentioned earlier, I coach a lot of longevity, and actually in the process right now, I've been developing some like group online coaching things. So I've actually really been drilling down on the question that you ask. And the way I set up with my coaching is there's essentially like four different pillars of health, and we can jump into all of them. I'll go through them kind of quickly, and because I could talk and do talk like hours on each. So one of those, and really what I would say is most of our health comes from let's start with this premise. We are all designed to be healthy, right? Like from a evolutionary, level, like survival of the fittest, like we evolved to be healthy. All spiritualities teach like your God-given right is to be healthy. You're born to be healthy. Um, so let's just start with that premise that we're all designed to be healthy, right? So what really dictates our health and well-being are the choices that we make throughout our life. And we're just going to call those lifestyle choices. And so what I teach are five different pillars. One of those is your nervous system. And when we're talking about the nervous system, we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. Your sympathetic, parasympathetic, your fight or flight, or rest and restore nervous system. Okay, we live in both at all times, by the way. Take a wild guess, fight or flight or rest and restore, which ones in this world that we live in right now we're getting driven into all the time.
Definitely be being programmed for fear and consumption. Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, it's not just that we're programmed. Our programming is to look for that at all time. And then we're being fed that because, without self-awareness, we're all just programmed that way. We're looking for it that way, right? So that's a big one right there. And I'll just tell you, you experience everything through your nervous system. And so right away, when I see every day, I'm a chiropractor, I'm looking at people's nervous system all day long. We live in a world where just everybody's nervous system is being jolted all the time. And so and it affects every physiological aspect of your body, and it has a deep, profound effect on your health and well-being. So that's one thing. And so we can talk about, we went on I mean, I'll just give you a great thing like with the nervous system. You want to look at ways to balance it, right? One of the great things about the day that you and I met a week ago is like we were out. I mean, we did so many things healthy for our nervous system that day. We were walking in nature. I mean, humans, we've become very disconnected from just nature and our environment. We were in community. I mean, just it was such a cool day for me because I got invited into that group. I hadn't met, I mean, other than a couple guys who invited me, I never met any of you guys,
Mm.
and what a amazing like community of just dudes, and that was kind of the point to be there was to be in community. Um, we were moving our bodies. Moving your bodies actually like calms your nervous system. So we were just doing a lot of things there that like met the criteria of a healthy lifestyle choice that helps calm your nervous system. With that, okay. Another thing then another pillar is I just call it rest and restore, but it's really optimizing your sleep. Sleep is so important
Mhm.
to balance your health. Um, and then another pillar is gut and nutrition. Rather than focus on diets, I mean, what I really focus on and teach people is like, let's get your gut healthy. And as we're getting your gut healthy, guess what? I mean, it's going to fall into like what you're eating and what you're putting into your body as well too. Movement. Okay, I just talked about movement. That's another pillar of a healthy body and lifestyle choices around movement. And then the say probably the biggest and most profound one that people don't think about and don't realize the importance is human connection. Um, and I mean, my pillar is connection. And there, within that pillar, there can be connection. I have connection to nature and also connection to spirituality, and we can talk about that a little bit. But human connection is the most correlated. Um, uh, it's the most correlated thing that people have in their life who have longevity. And it's the most correlative predictor of good health and longevity. So we talk a lot about human connection and the importance of that.
For those who are interested, I know that you have recorded and are putting out classes online and building a community that people can be a part of surrounding all of these pillars. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes, of course. But for people who have difficulty connecting with others for any reason, what are some guidelines on how to get started and practice that on a daily basis and progressively get better and better at like absorbing a community and being a part of something great?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to pre-frame my answer with what you are asking is a real thing that I see all the time with people, which is a lot of people have become disconnected from human connection. And there are a lot of really deep reasons, um, and a lot of times traumatic reasons that's existing for people. So the what I would just say the premise there is, um, we are brought into this world where we're just social creatures. It's the reality of who we are biologically. No, there's no baby by itself, right? If there is a baby, there's a mommy with and a baby, there's a daddy and a baby, maybe there's a nanny and a baby, or auntie and a baby, or whatever adopted parent and a baby. Like no baby, nobody's here and does it on their own in a very profound way from the beginning. We absolutely, as humans, need each other from the start. And in all these categories of health and well-being, I mean, it's easy if you think about like nutrition, like we have nutritional needs, okay, but if you give us toxicity, poisonous food, it's going to poison. So there's a lot of toxicity in human connection. So I would just say the premise to start off is, I mean, there's a lot of different levels people might need help in this area because they could have trauma from the way they were from their family. They could have trauma from being bullied in school or trauma from whatever, just experiences throughout life that we have that. So with that, it's very important to self-assess and then reconnect in like safe ways. So I'm just saying there's a factor of people that probably should I would encourage to be working with somebody professionally if you're in that factor. Um, but most people who are disconnected don't necessarily need therapy or anything like that. They've isolated themselves in whatever way. So one is just you know, if you're looking to change that, find simple ways to connect. Okay. I remember a couple of years ago, I started making it a practice. I mean, I'm busy with life, but I'm like, hey, once a week, I'm going to like reach out to a friend I haven't talked to in a little bit. Um, and, I'm lucky enough that I have friends throughout my life, and it's just been a really great thing for me. Oh yeah, make the time for lunch. I'm gonna make the time for this. I'm gonna make the time to connect. So just that awareness to do that. One of my favorite things I coach that anybody can start doing is just look for opportunities of random acts of kindness.
Mm.
Um, it is, if you start looking for that, little small things will appear all the time. And you can just do these little acts of kindness. Sometimes you're doing them and the person doesn't even know you did it for them. Um, but that is going to like reconnect you to your soul. It's going to start reconnecting you in a very safe way to other people. It doesn't even require a lot of communication or things like that. So
Energetically, there's a connection too that we're not really cognizant of throughout the day. I mean, every thought we think, every word we speak, everything we do is like an energetic offering to the universe, to others, to reconnecting. And so even if they don't know, like you were saying, that you're doing something kind for them, there was an energetic offering that flowed through them. I love that idea of random acts of
Yeah.
kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm interested for I mean, you have an interesting background. Like what's been your experience with connection with others and kind of I mean, you do this podcast in part as a way to like reconnect and share a message. So
Sure,
give me
yeah.
your history with that.
You know, for a long time, I was raised Mormon as part of a huge community with some really great people. And then in my early 20s, we just stopped going to church and sort of felt really disconnected and had to really struggle for a lot of years and figure out the whole connection thing and try to make friends with people that were similar or, and we kept moving, throughout those years. So there was a lot of disconnected from family who were down here in Arizona, and we had moved to other states, and life was really overwhelming without a community and some kind of a support system. And when I came back down here in the early 2000s with my three sons, we reconnected with family and had different relationships over the years with people and their kids and their families. And being a part of a community was less overwhelming for sure. So then after the whole um part of my life where I had been on medications for 15 years till 2014. When I got off of that, I sort of got my mind back. I could start feeling things again and thinking really well as compared to that 15-year fog. And like you, I started getting really interested in longevity and mental wellness and healing and wholeness. And then eventually by 2017 was inspired by a friend of mine, Tim. He lives in England, and actually got me started on this good in the head journey, right? And putting it out onto social media and doing a podcast and having a website. And through connections like this one with you right now, I'm edified, I'm lifted up, I'm sort of my cup fills so much that it starts to overflow, and then I'm able to offer an overflow to those in my life that I'm surrounding myself with on purpose, intentionally. And so I really get the point that you're saying that community really is important. I could join a group, or I could create my own community and invite others into it, and through it do some good in the world, and have a
Right.
purpose that aligns with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your story. Uh, I feel so strongly like human connection is also where all the magic happens.
Hmm.
All the magic happens.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything on their own. Steve Jobs is an amazing guy. He in no way, made the iPhone himself. Th these are like we work together as a community and it's also you mentioned something, it's so people will say this all the, it's so healing to the soul. I mean, people who are disconnected, I mean, we've all been disconnected in ways. I mean, it's also that happens to everybody in some very big, profound ways for some people, but little, small ways for everybody. And we've all had that feeling of like when you start to connect to people, like just the energy, and it is healing to the body, and it's it, it's just so profoundly important to realize. And this has been my journey too over the years. Again, I've always been been very blessed, had good friends in my life or whatever. But I mean, there's a part of me that can just isolate myself and go inward. I mean, my tendency, just with anything I experience emotionally that I don't like, is to repress things. So
Hmm.
it can be even not honestly, I'm not being honest to myself sometimes, and I have to
Hmm.
look for it. I've
Yeah.
learned these things doing work over the years. Um, but it's just such a magical thing to like connect with people. And even if you're a connected person, there's always can be more with
Mhm.
connection. And when you get more, the feeling you always get is like it's just this like charge for the body. Like I have chills right now. I mean, you and me are having this conversation where we're connecting over something magical, and it just builds that energy.
Years ago, I was pretty scared about going on that Mormon mission because I was going to Greece. I lived in Athens and Thessaloniki. I was going to learn a new language, and I had a very huge problem connecting with people because I was raised out in the mountains. I wasn't really out in public school until, junior high, and very like six people in the whole school, growing up, and half of them were my sisters. So, really learning how to connect with others was sort of challenging for me, especially at first. But I came across a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm.
And when I read through that, I was like, I'm going to start doing some of these things. And it was something that I read throughout my mission with some of my companions, and we would try things out in public like that we had learned in the book. And it was so much easier just to go out and put yourself out there and really start talking to people, total strangers. And it became a game. It was fun, and we really started to enjoy it. What are some other things that you've learned along the way, in everything you've studied in your personal development journey that has helped you further your connections and really put yourself out there some more?
Um, well, one thing, I love that those you've mentioned two amazing books that have just appeared in your life that are really like amazing books. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of personal development, one very pivotal thing for me that happened is about, God, what was it, 2008, I started, one of my mentors, is a guy named Michael Burnoff. You're in the Arizona area. Have you heard of Michael Burnoff?
No, I haven't.
So Michael is one of the world authorities and teachers in a thing called NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming.
I've heard of that.
Yeah,
Tony
no,
Robbins
probably
uses
heard
it.
this.
Yeah.
I always said Tony Robbins is probably the guy who made NLP most famous. But I'll tell you this, pretty much any like persuasive communicator that you've ever, yeah, seen or heard is probably been taught some very profound NLP techniques, because NLP is really about communication. And, if we're talking about connection, communication is a pretty big aspect
Hmm.
of that. And communication can be done well and it can be done poorly. NLP is really kind of like the science of how to effectively communicate and, you know, influence people. But the interesting thing is, when I started doing these NLP courses with Michael, um, 90% of the people that were in there were like in sales in one way or another. They're coming in there because they want to sell better. They want to, be able to, which is great. That's a, if you're in business to sales anyway, like go get sales training for sure. And NLP would be a very effective thing. Um, but the interesting thing when you start doing these courses, the first thing you kind of learn is there's a communication you're having with yourself. And I would say with communication, like
Mm.
it actually starts with you,
Mm.
because you're always having a conversation with yourself. And yes, you can be having a conversation with somebody else, but if you're trying to change something about that and you have your own, conversation that's affecting you in a good way or a bad way, like it really starts there. And so when you start learning these NLP skills, which was like my answer for you of what really has like profoundly shifted this for me, um, or a tool that I learned, you really like start seeing how your own communication with yourself is affecting your outcomes. Um,
That makes a
so
lot of sense. How we
yeah,
view ourselves, the self-talk that's going on in our heads. I mean, that's profound.
yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, one of the things I always say to people in my coaching is, the conversations that we have with ourselves, a lot of times you wouldn't speak to your worst enemy the way you speak to yourself,
Right?
and the way that we self-judge and we're critical of ourselves. Um, and so one thing you can do right away is, I mean, I'll say, just when you talk to yourself and you're catching yourself in these, beating yourself up in one way or another, to really think about like you're talking to yourself like you're talking to your best friend, and to change that conversation. These things are happening all the time very unconsciously. So that's a really important thing. But
Mm.
neurolinguistic programming is a really amazing way to understand communication at a much, it's kind of like, college level understanding of communication. And most of us just learn the communication we've learned over the years. So, um, that's a great tool, and just being really aware of the words that we use and communication. What we know about communication too is, I mean, communication. I think there was a UCLA study. I'm not going to be exactly right with the numbers here, but it's something like only like 20% of communication is actually the words that are spoken. The rest of
Mm.
communication between two people and with yourself
Hmm.
is your tonality and your body language and a bunch of things unconsciously that we're not even picking up on.
Micro expressions are huge, more than we know. There was a show we watched called Lie to Me, and he was a specialist in observing micro expressions, and he was so
Yeah,
good at it that people from all over the world would like seek out his skills to help them solve crimes or mysteries or find people. It
yeah,
was amazing.
yeah, yeah. That sounds amazing.
You know, we were talking about it as we were walking, and we're so similar in so many ways. We were talking about how we grew up being people pleasers, and how that damaged our life experience in a lot of ways. It resulted in boundary issues, in not being true to ourselves all the times, in sort of trying to read people in a way that what can I do or say that will, you know, make them feel good? Like that's our responsibility, right?
Yeah,
Can you talk about that a little bit? What you had to
yeah.
say was pretty profound. It was neat.
I wish I remember what I had to say at the moment. Um, yeah, I mean, people, we all have aspects of these things, and being a people pleaser, first of all, I'm not going to say it's not in any way a bad thing. It can be a bad thing if you're not being, because often what happens, if I would say people like us, and what's been my experience is being a people pleaser. Sometimes then I'm sacrificing myself to please another. Um, and it's not even that that person is doing it to me. It's just been my pattern over the years. I mean, over the years, I get a, I mean, I love helping people. Of course, I'm a people pleaser.
Hmm.
But I had to learn along the way, and I find this with many people who are people pleasers, is, learning how to set boundaries and learning like how to say no to things. And I mean, what happens when you people please too much, you become frustrated and you can become angry or resentful or whatever frustration, however sad, however you're going to process when you're emotionally not handling that thing. And again, might ultimately show up physically in your body as stress and tension somewhere. It will. And, for somebody like me, it might cause my low back to go out,
Hmm.
because that's a weak point because I damaged it. And so things like that can show up in your body all the time. So, just becoming self-aware that I'm a people pleaser, and how that has been beneficial, but then also how that can be harmful. And like really sit down and assessing that, and then you can start making shifts and changes.
So years ago, I started reading a book called The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beattie. And it was in 2014. And I opened this book and it had a date. And so each day of the year has like a couple paragraphs for the day. It's like a daily reading kind of book. And I've been reading that since 2014. And then now I've started passing it around at work because it's such a useful, beneficial tool to become more self-aware, to know how
Hmm.
to set boundaries, and to really create a way more beautiful life and communication and social skills. And it's just been such a great book, and I highly recommend it for people who just don't know where to start, to make their life better, because nobody else is going to make your life better for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So, I mean, tell me like what was the like big like some of the big aha things with that book for you and why you recommended it to people?
um,
I get the concept of letting go, but whether that like in what ways did you enact this book?
Sure. So the first year or two, I was just reading it, and I had been kind of dead inside for so many years, just in this mental hazy fog, from all the medications I was on, that I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. I knew that I needed to get better if I wanted my life to be better. And because, you know, nobody's going to make our life better for us. We've got to get better at things and acquire some skills, some knowledge, some tools, and start making a better life for ourselves. And in the language of letting go by Melody Beattie, she covers so many aspects of the human experience. And she's got this degree and she's written all these books. She's lost a son in his early 20s. So she also wrote a book called The Grief Club. And she's been a therapist and had a center for people who are addicted to anything, but usually drugs, alcohol, pornography, sex, relationships. And in it, I found out so much about myself just by reading through her stories and experiences and absorbing her knowledge and wisdom that she'd acquired over decades of living life. And like Tony Robbins said, we can compress, you know, a whole human life experience into hours if we listen to an audiobook or a podcast, and we can absorb all that information and wisdom and then utilize what we're interested in, progressing in our own lives. And I found that to be just key in a personal development sort of a journey. Like let's get it all out there and let's pick and choose what we want to experiment with and
Yeah.
see what the results are for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful, by the way, and one of the things I love that you're sharing there is, I mean, it requires, and it can start very gently, like it requires vulnerability, and kind of a self vulnerability to start with, and I mean, one of the things that can be safe about a book like that too is it really does, it's starting with this, like, it's you and the book at first,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And then you took that book and you started bringing that, what you're learning, the tools you're learning in that book into the world, which is now you're affecting other people. Um, so it's really like that's like a safe place for a lot of people to start too, and it's a great recommendation, a book like that that can you can start with some just like self-reflection and then ease into some patterns of how you're interacting with other people in the world and communication. So yeah, that's great.
What are some books that you would recommend for people who really want to get involved in their own personal development and self-awareness?
Um, I am not a, I mean, I'll just tell you, I have tons of books on my shelf. Like high probability, I'll order this book that you just ordered that you talked about today, and I'll probably read about 10 pages of it and put it on a shelf. I don't absorb the information best. Probably my ADD in me that
Yeah.
doesn't. But um, I would say for me, there's a lot of people that I will listen to, like now, like on podcast or
Mm.
YouTube. So I mean, one of the I would say Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think a lot of these names are names that I think you and I talked about, and you'll know because I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza is an amazing person just to listen to. I don't think anybody can listen to Dr. Joe and not have some like and have their brain changed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Even if you're listening to them being like, this guy's full of it, and you're probably not going to feel that way, but you're gonna see some potentials in the world in a way that you didn't think about prior to listening to him. So, and he really talks about the science of how you can neurologically change um, emotional patterns and self-communication patterns and manifest a very different life.
Physically.
Um,
Yeah.
and if you just passively listen to Dr. Joe 30 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day, I'm telling you, your life's going to change.
Agreed.
So he's a great one. I mean, we mentioned Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, phenomenal. He's on tons of podcasts and whatever. Another guy like these guys, Dr. Joe too, is like the way he's communicating is NLP. It's going to affect your neurology. It's going to change the way you look at things. I mean, I think Dr. Wayne Dyer, no longer
Mm.
with us. I
Love
mean,
him.
that guy, I just, these are people that I will listen to on a monthly basis, and I just listen to because it gets my thinking. And I mean, I'm a very positive person. I have a lot of great, I'm thinking about gratitude all the time, and all these are things that I've absorbed from these people. Uh, I mean, on a philosophical level, I listen to a lot of Alan Watts.
Mm.
I mean, just expansion of your mind and your thinking will turn into expansion of your life and the way you interact with everything in the
Yeah.
in our
And
day-to-day physical being.
There's a podcast channel called the Be Here Now Network, and they've got just thousands of hours of Alan Watts, Ram Dass, and many other like speakers and authors that are just incredibly deep spiritually and have this beautiful life. And they share
Yeah.
everything on that podcast. I highly recommend that one. It is amazing.
I listen to, yeah, that's on, I'm subscribed. Yeah, I listen to that a lot. They have I think it's Alan Watts's son or something is,
Hmm.
one of the founders of that. So they have the whole, if you like Alan Watts, the Waking Up app, which is like a meditation app,
Hmm.
they have the entire Alan Watts audio collection. I think it's like almost 200 hours of him talking. So all the things, we find on YouTube that we're listening to Alan Watts, they have all the talks from start to finish that you have
Wow.
recorded.
What an
So
amazing way to start the day. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
We sort of like, I don't know, you talking about priming the pump,
Hmm.
like you can yank on that pump handle all day long and not get a thing out of it. But if you pour just a little bit of water down there, it for some reason primes the pump in such a way that you start cranking and just gushes out.
Yeah.
And so a morning routine, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes of listening to content or writing or journaling or breathing exercises, meditation, I mean, perfect way to prime the pump for the whole day. That's
I love, man. There are two windows of very like profound um, opportunity that we have in our days. One is right when you get up in the morning. Um, you're coming back into conscious form. I mean, that 5 to 30 minute window, you could even extend it out, but like you have a opportunity to really prime your whole day. And that is just the most optimal time to do gratitude.
mhm.
Take a little to calm, take 3 deep breaths like you and I did right before we did this podcast, right? Like that's setting your nervous system up for a successful day.
Mhm.
Take a few minutes, do a little visualization. I do a little you can do a little meditation, listen to Dr. Joe for 10 minutes, something that's going to get you in the right place. It's such an opportunity. And then that other opportunity is right before you go to bed. Um, there is so much that happens to our brain and our neurology when we sleep. There's so much science now on how important sleep is to every aspect of our life. And, you know, taking that 10 to 30 minutes, again, you could go a little bit longer, ideally, to like disconnect from social media, really just put your body in a calm state, put some positivity in your mind, like that's what you're going to saute on all night. So, just take advantage of these moments. Those are like very simple things that anybody can change right now that will, I always say little things when not done consistently, um, create such can like not brushing your teeth. It's a little thing.
Mhm.
Okay. But 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, if you're not doing that consistently, your mouth is a mess. Um, these little things, if done consistently, just like brushing your teeth, will profoundly change your life. Not just in the short run, they will, but in the long run, it's just compound effect of, you know, starting your day right, ending your day right.
There is a book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy that speaks to this
Right.
deeply, and he's got
Yeah.
such great um, instruction within that booklet of things to try in order to compound the effect. Like
Yep.
Einstein said that the compound effect is the eighth wonder of the world. And I don't think he was just talking about money. I think he was talking about spirituality, emotional health and well-being, everything.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can start the day out just like you were talking about, you do in small ways. And Jim Rohn says it's easy to do, and it's also easy not to do.
Yeah.
So choose your easy.
Yeah.
Do you want
And
an
I will
incredible
tell you
life
that,
or not?
yeah, in all honesty, the very healthy people and very unhealthy people. It's all these small little things that give you the health you have today, or the
Mm.
lack of health that you have today. Listen, very
Yeah.
traumatic. Yes, there can be big events. You can fall off the roof. You can, be in somebody can run a red light and smash into you, and like those types of things can happen. But for the most part, and even with those things potentially happening, I always say to people like, you know, I'm very healthy. If somebody runs a red light and runs into me, I'm gonna survive better. I'm going to heal better than somebody who's not healthy, So I am concerned about the things I can control, not about the things I can't control.
I love that.
But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, right, the compound effect, that is your health, you know, that's how it works, really. Now, there's thousands of choices we make every day that can steer you one way or the other. But if you want good health, like you have to understand it's going to be the compound effect.
Yeah. Looking back, I'm in my mid 50s now, and I've had so many life experiences. It seems like I've lived multiple lives just in this one experience so far. And I love to look back and see the most painful moments that I experienced and how I felt afterwards, and realize that it was a gift. The pain was a gift. The trauma was a gift. The accidents physically were a gift because it helped me to know how I don't want to continue to feel.
Yeah.
And then I can make a choice on what would bring the result of how I do want to feel in every moment of every day. And we were talking about, how pain is this thing that happens to us one time, say a traumatic event, we were abused as a child in some way, and it just happened that one time. But then we think about it and relive that moment. And the nervous system, the body, the brain doesn't realize that it's just a thought. It really does actually experience it again. And there's this chemical interaction that takes place in the body that's so incredible, where the brain and the nerve bundle by the heart instantly inject like 600 to 1200 chemicals and hormones into the bloodstream. And then within two pumps of the heart, it's reached over 80,000 miles of blood vessels, veins. The vascular system is just infused with this chemical makeup, this chemical cocktail that we put there through our thinking. And so when I first heard the quote, like pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, that really pissed me off. And then I realized what it meant once I heard Dr. Joe Dispenza talking about this chemical interaction and how magnetically the body's always pulsating outwards in alignment with that chemical inner world that we're creating, not even
Yeah.
meaning to sometimes. Are there certain habits that you recommend or suggest to your patients that will empower them to kind of help and save themselves and become more whole and well?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you did that's profoundly powerful in that moment that I do teach to people all the time. How you frame something is very profoundly going to affect what the outcome of that event that happens to you. So again, you have a bad experience. Let's just say somebody cuts you off in traffic, pisses you off. It's jolting to you, right? You can look at that person, be pissed off. You know, how much can we curse here? We go with cursing here.
Oh yeah.
Fucking asshole, fucking shit. You could, and if you're framing it that way, if when you get scared, you go into anger, you might, that's what road rage is for somebody.
Mhm.
They've just framed, fuck this person. And then they're triggered. Um, Somebody else might, you know, go into a passive state and cut them off and literally the rest of the day, because they're just like, they feel endangered. Like now they're closed off all day long.
Mhm.
Right. Or, what I'll teach people, and this is just an example I'll give, what I do, and I learned this along the way and always do this, is I have just a lot of, if I catch myself going into whatever thinking I am, like freaking jerk or whatever, like I go to my mindset of having compassion for that person. I don't know what's going on with that person today. The way I think about it, and this is great for me, I'm not ever going to interact with that person. It works better for me is like, man, there maybe something awful happened. Maybe they got in a fight with their wife. Maybe they got a call that morning, found out they have cancer. You just don't know what's going on with anybody at that moment. And for me, I'm just framing that moment that something out of my control happened to me that's now got my nervous system triggered. Um, and the power of reframing that moment of just having like, hey man, whatever's going on with that person, I mean, I go to a restaurant, somebody's rude to me, the server's rude to me. My instant thought is like, man, I'd hate to be that person. They must be having an awful day. And then I'm not like personally offended by it. You know, this is me more often than not, at least,
Yeah,
like
yeah, right.
with that too. I mean, that's another like thing I think we can do as you're trying to make changes in your life in whatever way is positive, is have the mindset of I do this more often than not. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect with these things.
Mhm.
So it's easier again, communication to yourself of like, hey, oh, I'm New Year's resolution, I'm going to go to the gym every day this week, all year. And then, 2 weeks in, you haven't been 5 times or
Mhm.
you haven't even gone once. It's like, you know, start doing things. When you don't do it, tell yourself like, hey, oh, I fucked up. I'm done. I'm not doing that. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
do
yeah.
this more often than not. Today was a not day, but more often than not, I do this. More often than not, when somebody's rude to me, I just give them my love back. Whatever it is, these things that you're doing, like, you know,
I love the power of the reframe. Years ago, because of that book I was reading by Melody Beattie, I decided upon 365 skills or ideas that I wanted to visit. And so on the website, it's at goodinthehead.com. You can go to the menu and click on my daily perspective shift. And then once I had written that for a whole year every day, then the next year I got to revisit that idea or that skill set that I wanted to acquire and embody and practice. And that was so transformational. What an opportunity. And like every single moment of now is an opportunity to practice wholeness and wellness and love and acceptance, compassion, kindness. And every moment of now matters. And everything we see, think, say, and do, it's so important. And so
yeah,
the whole my daily perspective shift allowed me and empowered me to literally reframe everything in a more beautiful way progressively through the years. And
yeah,
people that knew me back in Wyoming when I worked on the drilling rigs and out in the oil fields, they'd be like, "Is this the same guy that I knew? Who are you?
yeah,
What are you doing? I want in," and it cracked
yeah.
me up. And I was like, dude, it's a personal decision, and it's available to everyone to just reframe something in a more beautiful way and get in the habit of doing that. So I
It
love
is.
that.
It's one of the most powerful tools. Um, I love what you say about like once people get it, the thing is it's just not real for so many people. So many people, and I'll tell you what it is. It's the empowering mindset versus the like this just happened to me, like really like victim mindset.
Hmm.
Um, by the way,
Mm.
both are real.
Yep.
If you have a victim mindset, first of all, things are going to happen. Life happen. I always say to people, life happens. Things are going to happen to you. Um, and if you have that mindset of you can have two different mindsets, and it's your choice. This just happened to me, okay, which is essentially that victim type mindset. Or you can have the mindset, this is happening for me. And to really embrace the like, no matter what it is, as horrible and horrible things will happen. We'll all lose people that we love in our life, whatever it means. Like, even with that, and you can have both, you can have the mindset of like, whatever's happening here, there's something for me to learn. There's something about this situation that I can take and I can be better or I can help somebody else.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean like you're people do bad things and bad things happening and you're okay with it. But it means there's always an opportunity when you have that mindset and the power of like, what am I going to learn from it? What am I going to take from it? I've been through some traumatic things in my life that I'm so thankful now that I went through because I learned things from there. Not
Me
that I
too.
would say like, oh, well, hope that happens again to me. Like,
Yeah,
no,
no.
it's like
It
I
sucked.
learned things from that. I
Yeah.
learned things that allowed me to help other people that went through similar things so I could help them when they were going through their stuff. Back to
Hmm.
human connection. I mean,
Mhm.
so these are full circle things of like when you can frame things in your mind of like, there's something here for me to learn, as horrible this may be, and as much as it might suck, but I'm not going to be a victim of it. I'm going to take from this what I need to. Um, that is just one of the most powerful tools that we all can learn as humans. And it's a tool that ties into us being better to ourselves, starts with us, and then being better to each other and, reframe, healing this like community of mankind, and I just see it everywhere. There's just healing out there that needs to happen everywhere, but where does that start with? We can be mad and frustrated with whoever and what we all blame, but what can I do about this? What little things that can then translate to big things? Um, and talking to you when we were having our walk, like you're just, I don't know if we talked about that specifically, but you're here doing this podcast. I mean, to me, like that's the mission and that's the responsibility that we all have for us individually have a better life, but then that's going to just translate into very little and big things as for humans.
Yeah. One discussion between two men out on a hike sends out a beautiful ripple effect out into the universe and creates more beauty and joy and peace. But to be able to record something that sends out an even greater ripple because people can come back to it over and over again and be reminded of certain things they've already learned and had forgotten about, or, find new ways to expand their lives and make them more beautiful through listening to a podcast or a recording or a book or whatever is such a great opportunity. And something about the victim mindset, right, that I found really fascinating is I was really caught up in it, especially when I was on those medications. It really affected how I thought and felt, and made me incapable of really being my full self. But when I got off of those medications and started the whole personal development journey and learning all these things, the fascinating thing I learned, one of my favorite topics of all, is that when what we focus on, we feed, energetically, especially.
Right.
I mean, we are energy flowing through these bodies. We emit and transmit and project outward this massive energy that we can't comprehend or see or feel or taste or touch, but it's pounding out into the universe constantly at an individual level, let alone a like-minded group that gets together. The energy just exponentially grows and has become
Right.
more massive. And so, if what we focus on, we feed, in the victim mind state, we're always talking about this person or that person. They did this to me. I'm suffering because of them. But then when we go within and realize, like, I could have a growth mindset rather than a limited victimized mindset, and I could stop talking about all those things. And what I want to focus on and feed is what I do want to experience more of in this life. What do you want more of? What is that? What are you going to focus on all day long?
Mhm.
Of course, we've got the news channels, the social media feeds, and all this crap coming at us all the time. And it's our choice, like, are we going to cultivate a social media or an Instagram or Facebook feed that only shows us what we want more of? Or are we going to start liking and programming the logarithm to send us more stuff to become more overwhelmed within our body and soul and mind? Is our nervous system going to feel unsafe all day and fear, contract? Or are we going to open up?
Yeah.
It's our choice.
Yeah, it is. And absolutely. A lot of people, the people who don't see it, a lot of people are very disempowered.
Mhm.
So often the step is like
Guilty.
just getting people, yeah, out of that disempowered place. One way I also tell people to frame it and look at it is there's start focusing on what you want, not on what you don't want. Most of and because of the way our brains work and again this is kind of a human thing but let's make ourselves self-aware of this because we're again programmed to look for danger, we're programmed to look for fear. I mean, that's how our species got this far in life. That was a very necessary uh, function for survival. But where your attention goes, they talk about it, where your attention goes, that's where energy flows. But you have an attention, and most of us are very unconsciously. If you're not in charge of your where your attention goes, it's in this world with social media and everything. It's an attention economy. Everybody's working on grabbing your attention all the time. So somebody else is leading where your attention is. And frankly, they're just trying to optimize you for money, for clicks. And that's just the reality of how that system works. It's a very successful monetary system, but you play out the experiment 10 million times, it's going to get similar results all the time. But if you can be empowered to know that, like, hey, I want to move my body, my life towards something. So again, get really clear on what you want. What it is that you want. Most people are very clear on what they don't want, so they're focused on what they don't want. Well, here's how that aspect of the law of attraction really works. Focusing on what you don't want draws you, gravitate you. Think about gravity like towards what you don't want. And a lot of people actually, it's interesting because I have these conversations thousands of times over the years with clients of, they come back, I have pain, I get headaches, I have this pain, my shoulder hurts. And when I start asking them actually what they want with their health, like what is it? Okay, if your back didn't hurt, what would you be doing with your life? How
Mm.
would you, if you don't have these headaches and migraines every week, what would that mean? What is it that you do want? I understand what you don't want. Of course, you don't want headaches. Of course, you don't want back pain.
Mhm.
Um, you'd be shocked how many people are just like, I don't know.
Yep.
They really have no idea what they would do if I just don't, just get me out. They get frustrated with me sometimes because they're like,
Mm.
I just don't want to be in pain. Like, duh, like I want to feel good. Okay, well, what does feeling good look like to you? You know, um, which is you living your life. I want to understand what it is that you want to get out of your life. And I'm trying to get them to focus on what they do want. And so for people listening, get really clear on what you do want. And by the way, what you do want, the stuff that you don't want doesn't exist. But
Mhm.
we're focused on this. And then the world and social media and the attention economy and advertisers and everybody is grabbing this and feeding this to us. And this is what we're seeing because unconsciously this is what we're focused on. Whereas we need to be consciously focused on what we want to move towards, not what we're trying to move away. And as you focus on what you want, that will move you. Then you start inserting the actions that you need to take to get there and the people you need to be around. And you will just start seeing things that you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mhm.
Wayne Dyer's famous quote. And I just love that quote because it's
Me too.
absolutely true. But what you can control is what you're looking for. And there's millions of things you will start seeing that you're not seeing now.
Something that I did learn years ago was the the programming state of the subconscious mind and how in the first 6 to 7 years of life, the record button has been pushed and we observe and absorb everything, including our misconceptions, our misperceptions on what we're actually being taught. And then around 6 or 7, our mode in the brain, theta mode, uh, shifts, and then the play button is pushed, right? And we play out the rest of our lives according to all these misconceived beliefs and perceptions and the way of looking at things we did as a child well into our adulthood. And when you were talking about the two opportunities right before sleep and right after sleep, the brain is actually in theta mode. It's where consciousness or spirit or energy that we are has left the body to travel and is reabsorbing back into this identity and this life experience. And that 5 to 10 minutes right when we're going to sleep or right when we're waking up in theta mode, we have an opportunity to push record. And we were talking about priming the pump. It's actually just record, and we
Mhm.
can then absorb what we do want more of by reviewing a list of what we've created of what do I want today. And then the device that's as big as a pencil eraser that's back in the center of the brain called the reticular activating system will only allow in what that lens will see. And that's something we can decide to do to reprogram our subconscious mind through the utilization of the reticular activating system. And it's magical once you start experimenting with that. But first, you got to know what you do want. And not many people really have a list that they review every day of what they do want more of in their lives. And like you were saying,
Yeah.
when we focus only on that, our focus, energy, time, and attention is no longer on what we don't want, what we have been experiencing, what we're
Yeah.
victimized by. And then it naturally and easily just falls away.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Our it becomes work. It's work at first, but then it becomes just your natural way of being, right? So the person with the victim mentality, and again, I know a lot of people with the victim mentality. I've known a lot of people. I know people with the victim mentality. Um, and it's again, it's a real thing. What their experience is real, and a lot of times you hear their life stories, and you're like, oh my God,
Right?
it's very
Wow. I'm
understandable.
overwhelmed
I
now
mean,
too. Yeah.
yeah, it's wherever they're at, like it's understandable. So again, when I say that word, I just want to be very clear that they're not incorrect in being there. It's just they can have something different
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
that. Um, God, forgive me, I like forget like what my original like thought was with bringing that up with that. Um, but again, I just say like they can very much change that consciously. It's just at first it can be a little work and it does take conscious effort, but then it becomes an unconscious pattern, and their unconscious pattern of being a victim is just creating more of that for their this is what I want to get back to. Their unconscious pattern of being a victim, they keep on looking for those things and you will just manifest more and more of that stuff. And if it sounds woo woo as fuck, the whole like if I just change
Yeah.
the way I think, life will be different. But I love it because there's a whole science and neurological understanding now of how this works.
Mhm.
And 25 years ago, that wasn't there. And it
Mhm.
was you had people like, Bruce Lipton and like, who were just really, and Dr. Joe was just really starting to talk about the science of this. And to see where I mean, none of this stuff is woo woo anymore at all. Um, because the science has caught up to what's going on and they can image the brain in ways. So it's important to know too that this is what the science supports now, which is really profoundly and powerful to know. Really cool for somebody like me who, again, grew up with two PhD parents in hard science, physics and chemistry, and really was taught critical thinking um, in a profound way. So, what I'm also happy to support is this is like very concrete science that we're talking about.
I love that. And yeah, I've experienced the same where I used to question it all in a negative way and be like, oh, that sounds like BS to me, but
Yeah,
science has caught up with some interesting facts. One of them, they say that through our five senses, which are very limiting, um, we have the opportunity through them to absorb 40 billion bits of information per second. And they've equated that to about, with technology the way it is, the phones, the computers, life, senses, that's about 70 gigs of information a day coming at us. And the reticular activating system filters it all down so that we don't get overwhelmed to what we subconsciously have patterning for, beliefs, perspectives.
yeah,
The reticular activating system is a lens through which all of it filters, and it becomes this bias confirmation opportunity where we can program that bias information to serve us and empower us and create a more beautiful life and become someone who's consistent and capable and powerful. And we can't really step into our true power as creators when we're overwhelmed by the overconsumption of things or beliefs that aren't serving us. And th- once I started realizing these things, it just offered a shift within my life onto a different trajectory that was so massive and discrepant from how I used to live and be and speak and think. And it's become such a blessing to listen to podcasts or books from Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Gregg Braden. You got podcasts like, Tony Robbins. It's called Robbins Maddens Training, and it's about how to see things in a different way within relationships, within love relationships. And these videos I've watched are so powerful. My wife and I will spend time on a Sunday, every Sunday, and listen to these relationship videos and then break them apart and talk. And everything goes away, and we're so present with one another. And it's such a gift. And that's
Oh, that's
empowered us to
beautiful.
create a far more beautiful relationship than either of us have ever had in the past. And there's just so much opportunity for consumption of things that you do want more of through listening to all of these different podcasts. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Is that something, is that a program you guys purchased, or is that just like something you found? I mean, are these videos on YouTube?
Uh, all of these things are for purchase, but on YouTube, you find so many of them
Yeah.
that are just free, and it's
I was
worth
just
it.
gonna say, I mean, a great challenge for anybody who's listening to this is listen to Tony Robbins. Take Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza. There's just two people. Listen to one video of each of them. Like, I promise you, probably one of them, you're like, I could listen to this guy. Like, I mean, sometimes you hear somebody's voice and you're just like, I can't take this person, whatever it might be. But, here's the challenge. Like, for 1 week, just 20 minutes a day, more often than not, you might not do it every day of that week. Like, listen to these people in the morning, or the evening right before you go to bed. Um, it's going, if you do that for 1 week and you just kind of listen passively, see what happens. And after a week, if you're like, nothing, like whatever, doesn't change a thing, I don't think that's going to happen for you. I've done this, I've given this challenge to a lot of clients over there. I'm like, okay, just okay, give it, see what happens. You will, you're now getting a different voice in your head. Most of our thoughts and behaviors, 99% of them are totally unconscious anyway.
Mhm.
Okay. You will start to see things a little differently, maybe very big differently in your life. And I will just tell you, if you see things a little bit differently and you see things a little bit differently and maybe just a little bit way that helps you, after a week, maybe you should do a little more of that and a little bit more. It becomes easier. And then after a week, you don't. There you go. You did the challenge. Thank you.
Yeah.
You gave it a try. So but that's where people who are disempowered because they have whatever excuses in their head that things aren't, they're not going to change and they're justified being the way they are. And, of course, it's all happening to them and not for them. And you're just trying to help them get a different shift. Um, if it doesn't work for you, it won't work for you. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I love that.
And
That's a great
it's free,
recommendation.
right? Like, here's the great thing
Yeah,
about technology. Like,
free.
oh my God, I can go and listen to Dr. Joe all day long if I want, or Tony Robbins. And there's all these guys. There's so much content out there for you to absorb. And if you're going to be death scrolling YouTube, which I've been very guilty to of
Mhm.
myself, um, like you might as well, life scroll YouTube. And these things, I'll tell you, as a doctor and a lifestyle coach and a longevity coach, these things are going to give you health and longevity.
I agree with that. That is such a great recommendation for people. People that I've also gained so much from by listening to them are people like Marissa Peer. She uses NLP. She's a psychiatrist, psychologist, and a life coach.
Mhm.
There's Peter Crone, just incredible when it comes to self-awareness and living a life beyond triggers and heartbreak. There's Lewis Howes. There's the Ed Milet show. I mean, there are limitless forms of content. And
Yeah,
when we start to curate a content feed for ourselves that's actually empowering and shifting us from a victim mindset into limitless opportunities, everything changes. It's amazing. I did want to
yeah,
cover two things with you too, still. One was maybe you could share some stories with us for the miraculous recoveries of some of your patients, some of the shifts they've made in their life from being discomfortable or uncomfortable at first and trying new things. And then all of a sudden, wow, there's limitless opportunities, and let's start out with that one thing if we could. Could you share some of those stories?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll give you one of my most profound stories. And it was like early in my career. And it ties back to that how emotional stress can really just profoundly affect the body. I had a lady come in. Her husband had been seeing me for a few months and was getting good results. And he brings his wife in one day, um, and she comes in and he's bringing her in a wheelchair. Um, he was probably in his, they were probably both in their 50s. And sit down with her. We're going through her history. Turns out this lady, like a year prior to this, was like a complete, I mean, like badass would be the word I would use. I mean, she like did kickboxing at a very high level, been a mom, worked. And when I was going through her history and like trying to find like what was going on, like basically her body was literally shutting down. Well, the backstory of what, because and then they were running all these tests, nothing was quote unquote wrong with her. But here's what was wrong with her, and here what was going on. About a year prior to that, this is her second marriage. She had had one child, a son, and he had committed suicide. I think he was, early 20s. And the mom that she was blamed herself. He had been struggling for a number of years with depression, whatever he was going through. Um, and so for her, it was like, I should have known, I should have done more. This is, it's her only child. I mean, whether she had multiple children wouldn't make a difference. But, she was so grieving. She was a victim at the moment, and also a victim of herself at that moment because
Mhm.
she had a lot of just self-guilt of like, this is my fault. I should have done more. I could have done more. Um, and literally what was happening to her was her body, like she had organs at that point that were starting to shut down.
Wow.
Um, because this emotional trauma that occurred in her life and happened, and what was she doing in her mind? I mean, literally, I don't think she was ever not replaying the story for a year straight in her mind. I mean, that's all she could think about, or,
Mhm.
within seconds of talking, anything was in her mind going back to her son and like the grief and the pain and oh, like, I should have done more. I should have known. Um, and, um, and so how does that show up? Her body's physically trying to process it. It can't. And things are shutting down. Now, there were things I could do as a chiropractor to help her clear her nervous system. We worked with a lot of people. I got her into like, and it's not that she hadn't gone to somebody and talked to somebody, but it was finding like the right person, the right team in this case. I will say I mean, when we talk about really deep rooted things, I always tell people, and this is a good thing, that more often than not, it's going to be a team effort. Okay. And if I'm working with you, you're the star of the team. Nothing happens without you. Okay. And I want to empower you to pick your team wisely. Like, yes, you might need a great, I'm a great chiropractor. If we're a good fit, like, pick me on your team. I want to be on your team. And you might need a good medical doctor. There might be a lot of different people you need on your team in that moment. And so we got her a really good team and in front of the right people that she was able. And I mean, it took a few months, but she was walking and things started, turning around in her life. Um, and uh, and that I had started listening. I had seen Dr. Joe. I mean, my mindset around like what emotional trauma does to people's body was there. But that was like eye-opening moment for me, and just really profound. And so I will say very often in small and subtle ways with all my clients, I'm really looking at what's emotionally going on with them underneath. And again, just helping give them tools to change that. But I mean, I have a client who just came in 2 weeks ago. I'll just give you a more recent story. Um, Great lady. She's like, in so many ways, I mean, she's overstressed, but because she's killing it in life. She's a salesperson in the medical industry. She's like top in her company. A month from now, like her goal is like, I'm going on stage a month from now to accept this award and some probably big fat ass bonus that she's getting
Yeah.
because she works in the medical industry. But she's super positive, upbeat. She's like super like Christian spiritual, like just like in the like great lady, but like her all her neck muscles are like in her SEM, these muscles here are in spasm. She has this like kind of like twitch with her eyes right now because her neurology is just like overwhelmed. And then she's
Understandable.
freaked out because this is happening to her now, so that's overwhelming her neurology. And she's like, I can't wait to be on stage and talk in front of 2,000 people. Like she lives for that stuff, but she's like, I can't go on stage like this. So it's like, and we've already been able to do like, I mean, she was like had this blinking thing going on, which she's really self-conscious about. Pretty much was like going on for half her day. Like she's probably experiencing now a couple hours a day. So, I mean, we're getting her body's ability to process stress better.
Nice.
And I'm working with her on this kind of like looping mindset stuff that she has going on, which I do a lot of NLP with people, and it's just conversational.
Hmm.
That's where NLP has helped me so much too, and just in terms of my practitioner with people, is because I'm able to break pattern interrupt people with their thoughts and help people reframe things. I mean, the reframe, we talked about how powerful that is. Like, if you can help people reframe things, once they reframe things, then their behavior is just different moving forward
Hmm.
with that too. So,
Wow. There's a book called Psycho-Cybernetics that I really love that talks
mm,
about self-speech, self-image, and how important that is
yeah.
and how to up level in that area. I'd like to go back to that woman in the wheelchair. What were the eventual results of compiling the team that she needed? How's she experiencing life now?
Yeah, I haven't been in contact with her in about 15 years. But we were a good 5 years. I mean, she went back to having a normal life. The 5 years that I knew her. I mean, um, in terms of team, I mean, there was certainly, and I just don't remember the details now. There was certainly finding her the right person that she would respond to in whatever type of talk therapy she did.
That's so
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was an important aspect for her in that case because it was really getting her out of that pattern thinking that she was in.
No, I've lost a lot of loved ones to suicide, and suicide is an epidemic that has grown so much over the years, especially through the shutdowns of the pandemic, COVID bullcrap, and everything that people are unable to process, especially by themselves. I mean, we were placed in the home, not allowed to go out, a lot of us, very disconnected. Thank God for, the possibility of technology and Zoom calls and all these things that came about and really grew because of it, because like you were talking about earlier, connection is so important, and a lot of people were confined to hospital rooms by themselves, not having actual physical touch, not able to see their loved ones ever again, and so much, so many lives have been destroyed, and being able to process through people that we've lost is the next topic that I wanted to discuss a little bit, surrounding the topic of consciousness and our true self, the soul that literally goes on forever, and the remembrance of like who we truly are. I mean, when I finally realized like I'm not this body, I'm not this brain, I'm not these thoughts, I'm not even my feelings, I'm just the observer of it all, the animator of this very beautiful, complex virtual reality suit, if you will, just a
Mhm.
different way to see life. You've told me about someone that that is a medium. Can you tell me about your meet with her and what's transpired in her conversations and what you've learned from her about consciousness and different things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first I'll say that that I think a good place for anybody to start with this conversation and self-awareness, and it will take all the start off with all the woo-woo, just a very practical thing we can all do, which is a mindful practice, which is really like it's a meditation practice, but it's really just being able to sit still with yourself. I mean, you said a lot of things that were powerful there of like, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions even, you're an observer of this all. So just really getting, I would say fundamentally, like when we start talking about consciousness and spirituality, of just starting from this place of the observer and practice being in the observer role. That probably for 90% of the population is very hard place to start, even just there,
Terrifying.
for them. Or it can be, yeah, it can be challenging. But I think that's where we kind of all need to start with that. At least for me, that's where I need to start there. Um, I I have learned a long time ago that when serendipitous things occur in my life, to really pay close attention to
Mhm.
them. Um, you know, again, a lot of great people will talk about this. I don't know like the hard science on it. I just know like when serendipities appear, um, and I have a lot of them in my life because I stay aware of them. Um, and I think for me, they're a guide. So the person you're talking about is Katie Kalin. She is, I mean, I guess the title is a spiritual psychologist.
Mm.
Um, and I'll explain just a little bit my experience with Katie and who she is. But she is, so Katie's just this like world renowned. She teaches classes all over the world, Dubai, Europe, South America, um, classes on um, spirituality. And I mean, I'll introduce you to Katie because trying to explain Katie for me isn't the easiest thing in the world. But I'll just
Tell me
explain my
about it.
experience with her. Is she's just somebody who came into my life through a mutual friend about 10 years ago. I would say when I met Katie, um, I would definitely probably call myself uh, can't say the word. I'd probably say I'm much more of like an atheist mindset at that point in my life.
Mm.
I was, I mean, I was raised Catholic. I would say I was raised Catholic light. I mean, light in my life. Like, I mean, I went to church on Sundays, but it wasn't like religion or like Catholicism was like a really big, profound thing. I mean, I had very ethical parents. I was raised in a very like, um, you know, moral and like ethical, like healthy environment in terms of that. I have had in my life a lot of friends who have been very hurt because they've been in toxic, like probably spiritual environments, whether that's religions, whether it's cults, or whether like whatever it is. Like I just know a lot of people have been hurt in that world. I'm not one of those people. But I think probably maybe my at that time in my life, my like some of my disconnection from spiritual, and I wasn't meditating. Didn't get there are times I tried to meditate back then, but I wasn't meditating. I didn't get meditating. It's more of a frustration to me. So I didn't even have that in terms of like self connection. Um, so I met Katie, and she was just somebody who was like in my life, but she had this people that she counseled and taught and spiritual. And I just loved and adored Katie. I was like this, we met as friends and like a friend group, and like I just like, oh my God, this person's amazing. And I resonate with her, and she's positive, upbeat, and we'd have these deep conversations. And she was very open to who I was, and I would like ask her all kinds of questions because I was just like, you were like very much living this like woo woo world, yeah, woo woo world. That's like, that I would say. By the way, I don't judge woo woo. I always say to people like it's woo when it works, like go for it. To me,
Hmm.
woo woo just means it's something that science can't, we haven't studied or science can't explain yet.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of things that used to be woo woo aren't woo woo anymore. And we were talking about some of those things earlier today. Um, but you know, just in the time that I knew Katie, I would go to some of her events. I'd listen to her talk. I'd see the people that she worked with, the lives that she was changing. Um, well, I would say kind of on the magic side, like what I would see with somebody like Katie is like, yes, and again, I don't even get like she is one of these people who will channel things, see things, whatever world she's doing, and she uses that to guide people. And I know many people that she's profoundly guided. And I would just say through my friendship with her, my communication with her, like I often would take her advice and she would, you know, like, and it always like worked well in my life when I did that. Um, about and I started referring her people a lot of times who were, um, you know, in my work with people, if somebody was like traumatized spiritually in like religion or leaving the religion or whatever it might be, I'd be like, Katie was like my go-to person. Like you should go do like, cause she would do like sessions with people and help people heal in that way. And people can be really, really, really hurt by what happened to them, you know, in religious or cult-like settings or whatever it might be, or just
Hmm.
with their family or whatever confusion they had in that world. Um, and and I saw as a doctor in terms of what I do with people, like when people need that emotional healing, like she was like my person to send them to, and would you know be part of that team that helped them get good results. Um, I started going to some of Katie's. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna go to Katie's. I want to see like her course where she like kind of teaches people what it is that she does. And I mean, I just became very open to my own expansion of consciousness, which when I became open to that, I didn't realize it was going to translate to my expansion of like spirituality um, for myself. Like the two to me now are like very interlinked. And it wasn't like I was looking for spiritual connection, um, but that has been something that's expanded a lot, and it's expanded in my work with Katie. Um, and so she's kind of become like part of my team member. It's uh, it's been a magical journey for me with that.
What are
Uh,
some of the things that Katie teaches? I'm sure that she's probably on YouTube, I'm guessing. How do you spell her name?
oh, let me look at my phone because I'll spell it wrong. Make
I
sure I get
appreciate
this.
it. I definitely want
Yeah.
to look her up and see what she is teaching. That's
Yeah, I know she has a big social. I don't know if she's in YouTube. I'm sure she has some stuff on YouTube, but she definitely, you know, she's on Instagram and all those things. She has a big following there. Okay, Katie Kyleen. So Kyleen, Kyleen.
and
Katie
Katie
is
is,
Katie.
oh yeah, she's definitely on YouTube. Subscribing, and I'll definitely check her stuff
Yeah,
out this week at
yeah,
work. Um,
yeah.
what are some of the main takeaways that you've learned from her that have been really useful and empowering in your personal life and your spirituality development?
Yeah. Um, a lot of what I've learned from Katie is really a kind of expansion, like my meditation practices and my consciousness expansion. Um, so I will say like I can, and I don't know how to explain it all, but I can much more deeply and instantly like connect. To me, I don't, what I think a lot of people call God, I just call source.
Mhm.
And I can really ground myself into like source connection, source energy. And being grounded physiologically translates into a calm nervous system. And being grounded with being a father of two teenagers, um, and a wife who's very type A, who's like amazing, but very like like I attract big energy in my life. I'm working with, often on days I'm working with like 20 to 30 clients. And I'm about being connected and present. So really being like radically grounded
Mm.
and holding space for people in what I do. I have just expanded that deeply with like my work with Katie.
That's an incredible result. I love how you said the affirmation or belief that you're reinforcing. I attract big energy in my life. What a
Yeah,
gift. What a gift.
yeah. And the other thing I really learned from her, um, and really this has been my expansion in consciousness and like working with like plant medicine too, is just really I've always been a great giver. I haven't always been a great receiver.
Mm.
Um,
Me too.
and I would certainly say what I have learned energetically, and I think this is true I see for anybody, is you have to balance giving and receiving. And when you have an unenergetic balance, whether it's too much taking and not enough giving, or vice versa, which was more me, um, you end it just is going to drain you. It's going to show up in your symptomatically, it's going to show up in your life in one way or another. And actually, I want to give a lot more. And what I learned was that means I have to receive a lot more. Um, and that hasn't always been easy for me
Mm.
with that. And I've had to work on that.
Me too.
Um, but I've really come to this place. And when I say receive too, like it's not like I need to go out and, hey, give me this. And it's just literally just open myself as simply as somebody gives me a compliment to just receive it, not be like, oh, thanks. And let me tell you how wonderful you are, because
Hmm.
like it can be uncomfortable for me even from that level. So to really like radically receive, um, to allow me to keep that energetic balance so I can give more and do all the big things that I want to do in the world, get them up more podcasts and share this message and really help people in a big way.
That's huge. I remember you shared a story about how you ended up on a fishing boat through this new practice of receiving. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was
I mean,
cool.
talk about a crazy, magical synchronicity, serendipity. Um, so when I first got this message to like radically receive, um, and fully embraced it, um, was during a plant medicine ceremony that I did. Um, I within a week had this, and let me give you a little background here. One of the things that I practice a lot with my Dr. Joe meditations is he has this line in one of his meditations, which is essentially saying like, "Hey, show me in a way that's like so like magical and profoundly like could not be a coincidence, that like I'm, manifesting the world that like I'm like focused on now." Um, so here I get this message, like not just to receive, which by the way, I've done like therapy work where like, I mean, probably 15 years prior to this, I started working on being a better receiver. I mean, I was such a bad receiver, like I said, somebody would say to me like a compliment, I'd be like, oh, like, just not even accept and not even receive that. So I got this message to radically receive. Um, Within a week, we get this like kind of invite out of nowhere. Our friends, we have this couple like they're extremely wealthy. He started a tech company and sold it, and and the guy's worth now like $300 million. And our friend Marty, I just use his name, Marty like loves fishing, and so he um, has they have a penthouse condo in Cabo. They invited us like, hey, why don't you and your kids come to Cabo for the weekend? Um, Private jet, like all that kind of things. Um, so we're like, okay, cool, let's do that. I'm like, this is cool. We go
Wow.
out there to Cabo, hanging out. Marty like invites me to go on his fishing boat. which is like a 75-foot yacht, like just like amazing thing. And honestly, I would have turned him down. Because it felt like that's a lot, like, and he doesn't need that. But he's going fish. He's like going with my friends anyway. Again, I got this message to like, and I also would have turned down and be like, well, I'm gonna spend the day with my family, like I'm here and
Hmm.
whatever. And you know, put a bunch of things out there that like wouldn't be true. Like maybe my wife's gonna be upset or the kids are gonna be disappointed that they're not with me. Um, but I was like, okay, I'll do this. And there's some friends that are supposed to be going. Anyway, all his friends canceled. Um, so it's just me and Marty and his crew of like 8 guys on this fishing boat, and we're leaving at sunrise. I love the water. I love I mean, it was just the whole day was just the most magical thing you could imagine. I mean, sunrise, just beautiful sunrise in Cabo. We're going out on the boat at that time. Most of the day, the boat was surrounded by dolphins, like hundreds of them flying, jumping around. Video, we saw like a pod of orcas. I'd never seen orcas in the wild before.
Wow, cool.
Um, Marty's like a real laid back. Like Marty and I talked probably for an hour, hour and a half, when we were just going out there. But then, I pretty much was just on this boat. It felt like the whole boat was just like chartered for me. And I'm just like, I'm just having this amazing experience.
Wow.
We caught, I mean, I'm not a fisherman. I caught, my line caught like 180 pound, like bluefin tuna, which Marty fishes all. He's like, that's the biggest one we've ever caught, whatever. It was just like
Wow.
magic day out there. And I was like, I mean, talk about like, being open to like receiving and then having just which was I mean if I had paid for all that to charter that boat, I mean, probably would have been a $20,000 day or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um and just I I can't tell you actually how many like things like that have happened for me when I'm just like surrendering and I work on it in meditation and when I'm connected to like spirit of just really being open to a person who like can receive um what is just being given to me. Again, it's not like I went out there and tried to chase and create that. I'm just like, just receive what is like, what give to you. I mean, I was this invitation to go. There would have been a good reason for me not to go on the hike that we went the other day.
Yeah,
Uh,
same, same.
that hike was so nourishing. And for me, I received so much. I received so much,
Me too.
with our conversation. Um, and so just really being open to that. It's just so many things have just appeared, and there's been this magic course of my life with like being open to radically receiving.
That is so beautiful. Through listening to Ram Dass and reading that book, The Language of Letting Go, I was finally cognizant of receiving. And like you, I always had a difficult time even feeling worthy of compliments. Like my self-image for most of my life was very poor. The words that would go through my mind, especially when I was on those medications, was "You're worthless. Your kids and everyone around you would literally be better off without you in their lives." All these really debilitating and
Yeah.
destructive, self-repeating, nihilistic, hopeless words. And when I expanded out of that, started doing things, new things, it was super uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I was good enough to even receive this new life, and when I fully opened to just letting it all be and being the observer and watching all these synchronicities unfold so perfectly and beautifully, I was amazed. So the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation sounds very empowering. I've been listening to one and I utilize it when I meditate. It's guided by Ram Dass, and it's just 12 minutes long, but there's one part where um, I have this vision of he and I in Sedona in water and in friendly embrace as brothers. And he's a teacher to me, and I just thank him so much. And then at a certain point, I open my hands, I put them out, and I repeat, I am always in the receiving mode. And so much has come to me through that. It's just magical. This life can be magical. And whoever you are, Wherever you're at in life, you deserve magic. You are magic.
Yeah.
Before we wrap it up, I also wanted to get into near-death experiences. I had one when I was 17, and when I came out of that, didn't even know who I was. I had hit my head so hard from like a 15-foot fall. I had went in convulsions, seizures, and I was literally suffocating for minutes. And I don't remember an out-of-body experience. And a lot of these near-death experiencers don't remember it for decades sometimes. And then all of a sudden one day it all flashes back to them for some reason, you know. But what I came back with was like precognitive abilities, the ability to read the energy of others around me, and weird things I'd never experienced previous to that. It was odd. But about 6 months ago, my mom said, "Hey, you've got to listen to some of these near-death experiences. There's thousands of them. You know, I've listened to hundreds now in 6 months on YouTube, and they are just mind-blowing. They produce so much peace and comfort in my life, and they serve as a constant reminder of what I truly am. You know, I'm not this body. I'm just an actor in this thing for a very short period in time, you know, for the full embodiment of a human experience, and I love it. You know, it's all the devastating, destructive, painful moments were gifts. You know, I can see that now. It's like, oh wow, there's a purpose behind all of it. You know, it's so exciting. Um, Speaking of consciousness, out of body experiences, remote viewing, and all these different things, what have you experienced in your life, or what stories have you heard along those lines that have really kind of like, wow, taken you aback or been of
Yeah.
interest to you?
Yeah. I haven't had near death experiences of my own. It's interesting. You and I listen to like so much of the same things on I think you absorb a lot of YouTube. We're definitely like similar algorithms, and I get those near death experiences that pop up all the time on my algorithm. Um, I don't dive into them too much, but I've dived into some enough, probably because I haven't had that experience, right? Maybe I'll be after this conversation, I'll be diving into them more. I have a question for you around that. I mean, with that, I find it extremely fascinating, and like, one of the things my critical mind goes to, not critical in the sense of like it's being like, but people have very different. I mean, they have profound experiences for certain, but a lot of these stories are very different, like whatever message they're taking away. Like, what do you think is, you probably dove into it a little bit deeper, like, what do you think's going on? What do you think you went on for yourself in terms of like your near-death experience? Like, you're into the science and neurology too. Like, what's your kind of thoughts of like what's happening to consciousness at that moment? And
I've got a lot of questions and assumptions and probable possibilities surrounding all that.
Mhm.
I'll start out by saying I know nothing, but I'm
Right.
interested in all of it.
Yeah, I love that.
There have been so many things that are just unexplainable that have happened in my life after that happened to me at the age of 17 that I know there's so much more going on than I could ever, you know, tell anybody.
Yeah.
The human eye alone can only see like 0.0035% of the electromagnetic scale. You know, we see nothing. We know nothing of what's going on. There
Yep.
may be simultaneous planes of existence going on this earth that we can't see. But
Yeah.
so many of these near-death experiencers have come back and said, I saw armies of angels and guides and ancestors on your side. They're
Yeah.
cheering you on. They're supporting you. They're giving you messages. And if you get quiet enough, you can hear them, you know. And that's pretty profound as a possibility. And if that's true, you know, like we're never alone. We've got so much support than we'll ever realize.
Yeah.
Um, some of the things that I've never really talked about publicly because people are like, oh, this guy's crazy. What the heck's wrong with him? You know, like there was a point where my last companion on my mission, Trevor Anderson, beautiful guy. And I was supposed to have gone home and I was extended out 2 months against my will. And I was gifted this 2 months with this beautiful soul. And it was a few years after we had gotten back. He had had issues with depression, and he tried to fix himself naturally. He didn't want to be on pills, and came to the realization, or the untruth, that he was broken and irreparable in this human form, maybe, and decided to take his life. Now, I didn't know that. And what happened is we decided to attend the same massage therapy college, the Utah College of Massage Therapy, back in like 98, 99, for a year-long program that he had told us about. And we were weeks into it, and I got this overwhelming feeling that I had to get a hold of him right now. It was like an emergency, and I couldn't understand it. I was like, what is going on, man? Went to the front desk, left class early. Yeah, I've got to get a hold of my friend. I know you've got his number. Can I please get that from you? And they're like, absolutely not, you know. And it was after 10:30 at night, and I realized that we were still going to church, and in our ward was like Elton Perry and all these general authorities of the Mormon Church, and Hartman Rector Jr. was his grandfather. He's on our little ward list. So I pulled it out, called him up, said, I'm so sorry for calling so late. I just have to get a hold of Trevor. And he said, his funeral's tomorrow. And I was like, what? And so we went to the funeral, and I sat by his sister and his ex-girlfriend, and it was strange. About a year later, a huge tornado touched down in downtown Salt Lake City, went through. I had just picked somebody up in their wheelchair and was taken to the hospital, and we literally were a minute behind that tornado as it went through, and we saw the brand new destruction, buildings missing half of what they once were, looking in a window and seeing nothing but sky behind. I mean, there were 10,000 workers working on that new grounds back there in Salt Lake City, and not one person was killed or harmed. I mean, just minor issues. And I was like, that's amazing. Well, about 2 months later, we're driving down in Holiday, South Salt Lake City area, and I remembered the energy. I felt it, as we were kind of chasing this tornado through town up on our way to this hospital. And I looked over at my ex-wife and I said, there's a tornado that's going to touch down right in front of us. And she kind of laughed and looked at me. I freaked her out, kind of freaked me out too. And less than 30 seconds later on the radio, there's this huge emergency announcement. And sure enough, right in front of us, a mile away, a tornado had touched down and gone through the neighborhood. And that was hard for me to explain or to absorb. And I just put it out of my mind. I was not going to think about that. That's nuts. And over the years, so many of these different things have happened. And I was like, how did I know that? And I really do think that the higher self or the soul or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is constantly communicating with and through us during our human experience. I mean, and if we're able to have the courage to start a consistent meditation practice, and getting silent and only focusing maybe on one thing instead of 100 things, and being less overwhelmed, and regulating our nervous system through breath work or yoga or cold plunges or whatever it may be. We've all studied all these things, like how to get the nervous system healthy again, and step into wholeness. Like the body and the brain, it all knows what to do. We just need to get out of the way, right? But listening to these near-death experiences has felt like home for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, thank you for sharing. That's like an amazing story.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share. Nobody really ever asks me those things.
Yeah. Well, it's profound. Here's yeah, here's I think because again, I have so many I'm so lucky. I have so many conversations with people, and again, I deal with a lot of people because of my clients, and I not every one of my clients goes where you go, but guess what? A lot do. And what I've learned from my experience, and again, I would have come from a very different place of being skeptical of all this stuff, is people have gifts. I think we all have gifts. And certainly let's go from the premise of what we talked about earlier of like what we're seeing and experiencing is a very small, less than 1% of what's actually going on. And that also has to do with what we're putting out.
Mhm.
They just found like there's actually like light coming off of our body,
Mhm.
because they have instruments now that can test that. We can't see the light, but like in a completely what we see black room with somebody else in that room, there's light coming off your body, there's light coming off of my body. Okay. Just because our eyes can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. All right. The wave, we're just talking about vision right now. The spectrum of what we see is incredibly tiny to the spectrum of the energy that, we have instruments that can read, but even what our instruments can read isn't the full spectrum yet, or maybe
Mhm.
never will be. Um, so there's a lot that we're not seeing aware of. That's a fact, right? And what I have now learned with my experiences, I have a few times a year, somebody shares with me a story like you just shared. They get premonitions, they have dreams that literally come true. And a lot of times it's not fun or pleasant things. I had a teenager recently that was with me with her mom and, shared with me that from a young girl, she has dreams. And one of the dreams she had, well, I think she was like 6 or 7, like her grandmother died. And guess what? She had this dream. 2 days later, her grandmother died. What do you think a 7-year-old does with that? She is like horrified to go to sleep. And she thinks
Mhm.
she had something to, at that age,
Like I
she didn't talk
caused
to
this
anybody,
death.
whatever.
Yeah.
She thought
Wow.
she created her grandmother dying, and that's just what a 7-year-old did at that moment. And but what she actually has in reframing is in my opinion, is a gift. I think you have gifts. I think everybody has gifts. Most of us repress them,
Hmm.
and a lot of us are afraid of them
Hmm.
and scared. I'll tell you one of my gifts that I've learned along the way is like the gift of healing. Like I've been putting my hands on people since if I go back, when I started opening up to this, like whenever somebody was hurt, I was the kid who was running over there and helping and literally putting my hands on them. My mom used to throw her back out all the time when she was little. I wasn't adjusting her, but like we had two brothers. Like I was the one who's in the room, like massaging her, and just like I was touching her. And I actually now know a lot of the reasons I get good results. I can tell you all day long how amazing chiropractic is and what a good chiropractor I am and how chiropractic works with the body. But I know that like a lot of people are getting healing from me because I just put my hands on them. Okay. I don't have bolts coming out of my hands yet or anything like that. But
You can
like,
see anyway.
yeah, but I'm like, my whole life I was told, and definitely my whole professional career, I had very powerful, energetic people tell me I'm a healer, and
Mm.
I was always like, oh, thank you. Like, let me tell you all the scientific reasons why, like, what I do, I'm a good doctor, not a healer. Um, and I'm both, now I've opened that, but like, that's a gift I have. Um, so I think we all have gifts. Um, and there's a lot of different ones that, and again, they would fall into that like woo-woo world.
Mhm.
Um, we talked about Katie earlier. Like I've had some people who have like guided me to like up my gifts, and my recommendation to people is there's people out there who can help. I think all of us work and manifest our gifts in a more profound way. So if you so choose, you can. I think there's something in this gift that you have. Um, that can help you and help the people and help your community in a bigger, more profound way.
Mhm.
Um,
How
and I think
exciting.
as a group consciousness, as a community, if we're opened up to these gifts, like we can do a lot of good in this world together for each other
I
um,
agree. I love
with
that.
with these gifts that we have.
I agree. I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed this time with you. I don't want to end it. I want to be respectful of your time. And before we go, is there any message that you would like to leave the world?
Oh, jeez.
Easy question, right?
um, yeah, 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 yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, what comes to mind right now is the importance for all of us to be in our heart. We talked about the nervous system earlier and how we end up in a fight or flight place a lot. And when you're in the fight or fight place, you're out of your heart. You're in survival. Um, And survival is not the best place to solve problems. It's a good place to survive.
Hmm.
Okay. If it's you're using it when it's intended for, it's a good place if you're really in a life or death situation to hopefully survive that situation. But that's not where we're meant to be the majority of the time. We're meant to be in our heart. Um, and realize when you're outside of your heart, um, you're not in a place of connection. You're not in a place of healing. You're not in a place of manifestation. You're not in a place of empowerment. Um, so a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, grounding, meditation, um, literally also connect to like I'm working on being in my heart. Um, I just think the world, if there's one thing we can focus on right now, is all of us, everyone, like working. You're gonna get taken out of your heart, but like be focused on getting back into your heart. You're in your heart, good things will happen, and you're able to help other people. You're able to help yourself.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
What are
yeah. Thank you for
some,
the question.
oh yeah, that's a beautiful answer. What are the best ways for people to contact you as a chiropractor, as a life coach, as a teacher of the five pillars? Where can people
Yeah.
find you?
Well, I'll send you my contact information, but Dr. Steve Hruby, last name is HRUBY, so the Rubies. So you can look me up, Google me, you'll find me. DC, I'm a doctor of chiropractic. My business, my brick and mortar is Kaizen Progressive Health in Scottsdale, Arizona. And then I'll just send you Superhuman, is my coaching. Superhuman is human spelled HUMN. So took the A out. There's a lot of superhumans out there, but mine's superhuman without the A at the end. So you can go to like superhuman, like I have stuff on there, and that's like where my coaching platforms are. But I'll send you all that stuff. But
Awesome.
yeah, Kaizen Progressive Health, Dr. Steve Hruby. Take
I'll
it from there.
put that all in the notes. I
Yeah,
really appreciate the fact that we showed up under the invitation given to us by Chad or whoever, last weekend, and that we were able to connect. And especially thank you so much for being a guest on the Good in That podcast. I mean, the things that we talked about are really deep and meaningful and impactful for me, and I hope they are for others as well. I just really appreciate the human that you choose to be every day that you wake up, and just love you, brother. Thank you so much.
yeah. Love you too, brother. This was amazing. Yeah, let's do it again.
Sounds good.
Talk
All right.
soon. All right.
Enjoy.
Appreciate you.
All right, everyone. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I invite you to go to the website, goodinthehead.com. Click on the menu, go exploring through there. I've got something called My Daily Perspective Shift that has transformed my life in so many beautiful ways. In that link, I share an invite to you to sort of decide what you want to experience more of for your life, for the rest of it. Life flies back by so quickly, and it's so important, I think, to make every moment count. My daily perspective shift is simply deciding 365 things that you do want to experience more of, and then visiting those topics just one a day for the next year and writing or rewriting everything that comes to mind when you focus on that topic. You can do your own research, do your own thing. I'd love to see some of the stories of the results that you experience through this writing practice. I've also got books for sale on the website. The Beyond Triggered series is all about triggers, what they are, why we're triggered, what we can do about that somatically, emotionally, mentally, and physically to be triggered and not have it be a negative experience for weeks or months, but maybe for a day or eventually as we progress through our triggers and all that work, maybe just for a few moments and then deep breath and begin again. Every moment of now is an opportunity to begin again. Much love to you all. Please subscribe to the podcast so that it will show up on more people's logarithms, and share it with everyone that you think may be interested in these topics. Thank you so much.